about 2371 BC to 2316. He lived during the 2300s BC. According to legend, which may well be true, Sargon was born of humble parentage and served as a gardener and then a royal cupbearer before usurping power. Now, if he was the first, I'll just pause for a second, if he's the first great imperialist in world history, then there are no great imperialists up to and including the time of the building of the Great Pyramids in Egypt. Is that true? Maybe. His name, which means true king, was probably adopted after he reached the throne. Eventually, Sargon conquered all Mesopotamia and extended his power even farther. A later exaggerated account of his deeds asserts that he spread his terror and his glamour over all the countries. He crossed the sea. He marched against the country of Kazala and turned Kazala into ruin hills and heaps of rubble. He even destroyed there every possible perching place for a bird. Brutal dude. This guy's brutal. He even destroyed every place a bird could possibly even land. After the reign of his equally powerful grandson Naram-Sin, however, Akkad was destroyed by mountaineers from the east, and today we do not even know exactly where the city was. Other conquerors followed Sargon down to the days of Hammurapi, who was himself very successful as an imperialist. Upstream from Babylon there lay many independent kingdoms, including Assyria. Assyria, capital at Nineveh. But by diplomacy and war, Hammurapi eventually conquered them all. What is perhaps most interesting is that a great mass of letters survived to show how carefully he supervised his governors. Things were sent back and forth to governors and orders and stuff, and then they were just put in libraries, and then the libraries collapsed, and then we dug all this stuff up. One official failed to clean out a canal, constantly being blown full of sand and stuff. On the news, Hammurapi ordered him to have it done in 3 days and to report back. To another governor, he had sent some archers, archers, to settle as farmers. But after 8 months, they had not received their land. 8 months. Hammurapi's letter gives detailed instructions and ends. If these men are not quickly satisfied, you will not be pardoned. So he's quite a busybody it takes to be a king of Mesopotamia. Abroad, as at home, the political and social problems of a civilized society had come to be extensive and difficult. Hammurapi labored hard and conscientiously to keep his government efficient and his people happy. Mesopotamian Civilization. The advances which had already taken place by the time of Hammurapi were remarkable. So he didn't come up and make all of this wonderful stuff. He came up into the middle of a whole bunch of wonderful stuff, and then he made a stable empire out of it. When men grouped their forces to create civilization, the results in every field of life were tremendous, especially when one remembers how Mesopotamia lacked natural resources. We were talking about that. No rocks even. And how brutal was its climate, with floods coming in late spring when the crops are ready. A modern scholar has written a whole book discussing the firsts which the Sumerians achieved. Such a list covers almost all the major aspects of civilization, including, as I understand it, the first aqueducts. Some of them underground, aqua tunnels, qanats. The arts were connected especially with religion and with the kings, but it is worth noting that every man of wealth needed at least one artistic product, a seal. Do you know about this? In late prehistoric times, seals had been made in a stamp form. Thereafter, they were carved as cylinders decorated with human and divine figures, and these cylinders could be rolled across tablets to serve as legal signatures, or across clay lumps attached to storage vessels as signs of private property. So you have a seal on a drum, and you roll it across a wet piece of clay, and that's your marking. It could be copied, sure. The busy craftsmen in Mesopotamian cities inherited many of their skills in working wood, clay, or metals from earlier ages. Lumps of native copper could be found in the hills of the Near East and had been hammered into tools or decorations since the days of Katahoyuk. in the 7th millennium BC. Copper miners had then learned how to extract the metal from the ores by the 5th millennium BC, though they would never have been able to use the low-grade deposits which are treated nowadays. Where copper mining started, the copper was in virtually pure lumps in native form, laying on the ground in some of the upper hill areas. Now it mentions that the ancient technology wouldn't have been able to work the copper ore that we can work now. Mussolini in World War II, he reworked vast hills of slag heap left over from Roman iron industry stuff, or iron workings. They just go and dump this stuff out. Vast heaps of it. Potent enough, full enough of stuff that with World War II technology, Mussolini was able to profitably, well, I don't know if it's profitable or not, but he did it. He got steel out of reworking slag heaps from ancient Rome. Copper tools had the advantage that they could be precisely cast and easily repaired. Copper was softer than stone, however, so smiths sought ways of hardening it. One of the ways you can harden it is to add arsenic. That turns it to bronze. But it says, quote, the death rate from arsenic fumes eventually led smiths to settle on tin as the additive to make bronze. Bronze being a hardened form of copper. Do you want to make tin or do you want to add arsenic? Well, everybody who uses arsenic dies. In many fields of practical technology, the Mesopotamians reached a level which was not markedly surpassed throughout all ancient history. Indeed, it is only relatively modern times that men's ways of making things have significantly changed. I was thinking, is that true? Does that hold true for the Greeks? Is that true? And it does hold true. The Greeks didn't even have really advanced mechanization, ways of mining and stuff like that, metalworking and stuff. They had better weapons of war, some different technologies and stuff like that, scientific apparatuses, but they looked down on hard work and labor as something not worth their time, not worth thinking about or worrying about. It was now necessary to count and write down numbers in this part of history. Mesopotamian arithmetic was based sometimes on units of 10, we have 10 digits, so why not, with special signs for 10 and 100, and sometimes on units of 60. Now they had special signs for 10 and 100. Later on they also had the place value system it'll mention. But why 60? Ancient Babylon, the old religious language, actually used units of 60. So probably because it's a divisor of 360, which is a rough estimate of the number of days in the year. And why not therefore divide the sky into 360 pieces? And that remains. In the decimal system, the Mesopotamians slowly developed an idea of place value. That is, the meaning of a sign like 1 depends on where it stands. 1, 10, 100. It's the digit 1, it's just in different places. In much later times, the Indians and Arabs took over this idea and passed it on to us. Units of 60 were especially used in astronomy, where men charted the main constellations and still marked on constellations that are, still marked on modern sky charts. So they've been tracing these same constellations since Babylon. The first precise observations of the rise and setting of the planet Ishtar were made in the 17th century BC. Of the planet Venus, Ishtar, Venus. The Mesopotamian year was solar, but was defined in 12 lunar months. So they defined the year as a solar year, but with lunar months, and that doesn't quite turn out right. So they had a, quote, a supplementary or intercalary month inserted about every 3 years. The leap year with the extra month. You got to work something out. Civilization also required the measurement and weighing of quantities of grain and metals. The chief weight, a talent, about 60 pounds, which was subdivided into 60 minas, obviously about a pound each, remained the standard quantity down through the Greek era. Geometry began in the measurement of fields, like the field out in the, my grain field. Measuring fields was the beginnings of geometry and the requirements of